Hello, welcome to the Briarwood Imagiporium and my wobbly camera stand. I'm Dawn Marie, and this is another make-along video. We are going to do, well, I'm going to do, and hopefully you're going to make along with me, covered journals. This is my go-to journal for everyday use. And I've got a stack of them, by no means all of them, but just to show you some ideas. These I use as a planner type journal. I also use it as kind of photo album. I don't have kids, so I don't have somebody who's going to want to inherit my photos, so I put them in my journals. And my journals are private, so I have a family member with instructions to grab them and destroy them when I'm gone. She can leaf through them in case there's interesting tidbits to know, but yeah, she gets to edit or not, because there's things that I don't necessarily want to share with folks. So I do some art journaling things in them. I mostly keep track of my calendar, projects, business things. I take notes for classes that I'm taking. I put pockets in them. I'm not going to show pockets and all of that today. And I do use a lot of different kinds of journals. For the very longest time, I strictly used just this journal so that all of my things are chronological. But I found lately I like making junk journals. I like making like lookbooks that are just magazine things, and I've done pages of that in here. So I like to play in different ways, and I don't necessarily want them mixed into my planner kind of journal. So you can use it for a lot of different things. You can even use it just as a photo album type scrapbook. So lots of different ways. I'm going to real quick just show some different covers I've done. The cover consists of some sort of paper, some sort of fabric on the binding, and some sort of trim. And a lot of my papers, it may start with scrapbook paper and then have things out of magazines quite often, or calendars, things like that. This was probably Better Homes and Gardens. I know it was an article about John Darien. He's a designer, and they just did a fun little story about game night, and I really liked the graphic of the old cards. There are scrapbook papers that have very similar images, so if you love that look, you can probably find them online, or you can go to Etsy and look for printables. I don't make digital printables, and I haven't really used them, but it is a great way to get just the paper you want, provided you have a color printer, or can send it over to your local printer and get it done for a reasonable price, which is pretty good these days. And then I just have some other random cutouts from magazines that came out of Enchanted Living. Not sure, that was probably a catalog piece. So that's the basics of how they look and how they function. And I'm going to get those out of the way. And we're in real time, so there we go. You're going to hear all the thumps and bumps. I will maybe zoom in. No, I don't think I will zoom in any closer, because we're going to want to be able to see everything. I am going to sit down and get comfy. So excuse my kind of rattly, squeaky chair here. Every time I move, it's going to make noises, but will deal. Okay, so what I start with is a sketchbook. And because this is primarily just a planner, I don't use the very highest quality. This is like the cheapest sketchbook you can buy at probably different brands, different places, but like the grocery store in their office supply aisle will have an inexpensive sketchbook. Everywhere I've ever been has had them. Any of your Mart type stores, we have a little one here called Buy Mart. That's where I pick up mine. These are under $5. So it keeps the project inexpensive. I teach this sometimes to folks on rather fixed incomes or no income. So it's a great doable project for just about anybody, price-wise. And this is plenty fine for the way I use it as a planner. If you're going to do a lot of mixed media art, upgrade to like a watercolor book or a mixed media book of paper. It'll have fewer pages, but you'll have more options on what to do. I do my mixed media on sketch paper because I honestly do not care about wrinkling. Like, if you look at the back of this page, you can see that it's quite wrinkled. The front, it's wrinkled, but doesn't bother me. So that was just a page I pulled out because I use it in an ad display for that particular class. So if wrinkly paper doesn't bother you, sketch quality is just fine. And then you're going to need a few other things. At the bare minimum, you're going to want some scrapbook paper or very large calendar pages, or even pages from art books. This came out of a book about Da Vinci, and these are books, although they're not his books, for this photograph. They collected all the books that he mentioned in his writings that he had personally read, and they got a hold of editions from his day. So while these may not have been the exact books Da Vinci owned, they are books that existed in his lifetime and that he read. And I just thought that was a really neat image, and I think I want that for my next cover. I probably will use it in conjunction with some scrapbook paper because I don't really love the big white borders. I'll make that decision in a moment. So you can do that. Scrapbook papers are fine. Really thick cardstock. The thinner cardstock will work okay. Regular weight scrapbook paper, which is weirdly hard to get sometimes. Sometimes that's all you can find, and other times, like, everything is super thick. These are all mid-weight. This one's pretty heavy, but I'm planning to use this as an inside thing anyway. So paper. If you're using paper, of course you need glue. My go-to is Eileen's Tacky. It's a PVA glue that is thick so it wrinkles less. Use the glue that you like best. Elmer's is a bit thin. I do use it for some things, but you do get more wrinkling. The more water in a glue, the more wrinkling you get. While we're on the topic of glue, pretty soon we're going to talk about fabrics, which are hiding over here. You will need a fabric glue. Fabri-Tac is the fabric glue of choice for me. I've tried a few others, and they're kind of runny. Fabri-Tac, it notoriously dries out quickly in the bottle. So even though I use it fairly often, and this is only a 4-ounce bottle, it's probably going to be too thick and it's going to be annoying. I did find on eBay, I couldn't find it directly from a manufacturer, but on eBay somebody was selling blister packs of these little minis, and I bought them to put in kits. I'm hoping I can find them again. If you can find them, you might want to get these. Is it more expensive per ounce of glue? Yes, but I think you save money because when it gets to the point that this is probably at, it's just frustrating to use, and I end up like wiping a lot of glue boogers off of everything, trying to get just enough onto my trims and things. So if I can find these again, I will probably go this route. I hate to buy extra packaging. I hate to pay more per ounce, but it's worth it. Using glue means I need a rag for my fingers. I keep it on a glass plate, so if it's wet, it'll have less chance of ending up touching any of my paper and soaking things. I have a mug of water. Ooh, on the topic of mugs of water, I also have, you might want to pause the video and go while you're getting your other supplies, a cup of tea, well, what's left of a cup of tea, some cooling Earl Grey, and water because I'll run out of tea and I'll be thirsty before we're done here. Pencil and ruler are optional. I probably won't use these, but I might, so I've got them out. If you have it when you're doing your gluing, that's what I didn't prep. Okay, you are going to want a glue spreading card. This is an old credit card of mine. Let's see. This one is not a credit card, but it did break the other day. Any card out of your wallet is not going to get ruined by using it for this, so you can do that. You can spread with other things. That's what I use. A couple options for rollers. You can use the opposite side of your card and just smooth, and that's fine. You may also want to have a roller. This is a brayer from like linoleum block printing. Handy to have. I don't think I went out and specifically bought it. I think it was in a pile of stuff somebody else gave me. And these I cut from PVC pipe and used alcohol to wipe off the writing that was on the pipe. They get used in my polymer clay classes and in my paper classes. They aren't super ideal, but they're not bad. They're good for rolling out air bubbles. So you may want a roller. You can get by without it. You're going to want paper scissors. You're going to want fabric scissors. I have a paper cutter here. Quite often when I'm making straight cuts on paper, I'll use this. I'm not sure how much cutting I'm actually going to do. So it's here. You may see me using it, but you can perfectly well draw a straight line with a ruler and cut with scissors. Let's see. Yes, that chair is going to squeak every time I move. I've got some fabrics for the spine, and I may most likely talk more about this when we get to that point. What I did was I looked at this picture and I went through and pulled fabrics out. Now this was kind of the obvious choice because it's got those colors, and even if I didn't want a lot of that, I could maybe use it from this side. You're going to want a piece at least 4 inches wide and at least as tall as your sketchbook. Some people like to hem the top and bottom edges, do a little glue hem. I have in recent years pretty much just been running a glue bead behind. You can also do, like this one's got a zigzag stitch along one edge. You can do that if you want to keep it from fraying that way. I run a little Fabri-Tac on the back side of whatever I'm doing, and it keeps it from fraying very much. My journals travel around with me a fair bit on a daily basis. I actually sew purses that are big enough to carry my journal in a pocket. And this is, you know, a 9x11 journal. So there's that. And then I picked out this piece. And at first glance, this piece doesn't have much to do with this. And that's part of why I like it. Sometimes I like to just not be quite so matchy. So it's an unexpected color. There isn't really any purple in here. But I liked it. It has this tan, golden tan color that you do see in here a lot. It just introduces a different element. The other thing I liked about it was this stripe is it's a textured fabric. Not high textured, but there's a texture in the weave. And I felt like it mimicked the binding. These are leather bound books, and underneath those are strings going across, heavy cording that are part of the binding process that make those lines across. And it just kind of picked up that idea of it. So when you're looking for a piece of fabric to do your edges, or to do your, sorry, my brain is jumping ahead to something else. When you're picking a piece of fabric to do your binding with, consider things. A lot of times, if I wasn't doing this project on camera, I would do the paper part of the cover first, and then I would go over to my fabric selection and hold it up and hold different pieces of fabric up to it. So I kind of jumped ahead and went this route. So that's where I am with that. I started to say something about edges. If you have a piece of fabric with frayed edges, you may want to leave those edges on as part of the decorative element. I'll have to see how easily these strings will pull out. They're kind of started, so maybe it won't be too hard because I don't want to spend a whopping lot of time on camera doing that. But mention that. Hang tight, reaching behind me, digging through that pile, not that one. This is not an exact example. See this? That is the selvage edge of fabric. It can also be done with the woven edge just frayed out. My cousin used to do upholstery, and she would save me those selvage edges cut off of the fabric. Like, this is a selvage edge. On this, it's sunbrella, outdoor fabric, and it's got some weird treatment thing on there. So it's not maybe as nice, although it does look like you've just inked it. So sometimes that makes an interesting trim, whether you leave it on the fabric or if you cut it off, save it to use another time. It's just kind of got some texture that's lighter and fluffier. So when we get to the trim stage, it may be decided that that needs to stay. So I will think about that in a few minutes. So the first thing I'm going to do is decide what papers are going where, and this one I really think is going to be my inside front cover. So I've got a paper for the cover, paper for the inside front cover, and then you don't have to cover the back, but why wouldn't you if you're getting started anyway? This paper I might use on the cover. I may trim this off and use this underneath, although I hate to lose all of this middle stuff that's pretty by sticking this over the top, and you're only going to see a little strip along the edge. And now that I fold that back, I'm not convinced that I love it that much. I think I'll just stick with doing the single thing. So just keep in mind, if you wanted to, if the image that you found that you want for your cover isn't big enough to wrap around the edges of the book, wrap it with a piece of scrapbook paper that complements, and then put your image on top. So I think, since I'm not going to use that on the front, those two I'm not using. And I know this book is going to last me about 6 months, so it's going to take me into March. And so I think I'm going to do inside back in this heading towards summer kind of a paper. I almost said fabric. They're interchangeable in my head, I guess. And I think this will be my very back because I just really like that pattern. I suppose maybe turn it right side up. Maybe leave it sideways. I kind of like it sideways. Worry about that when I get there. So the back is not a bad place to start. One thing to know on the back, one more thing you might, did I finish the list of things? No, because you're also going to want some trims. Hang on, before we get started, you're going to want some trims. Now you can stop the video and go get your stuff. You're going to want trims. We talked briefly about them, but I have a selection of ribbon and gimp and some basic white lace. And then in case that's too white, I have some painted lace. And basically painted lace is just done with acrylic paint, watered down, painted on. Yes, you can dye lace, whole different thing. Sometimes I want colored lace for projects like this, and I do not want to get out all the dye stuff and go through all the steps. It's just easier to grab the paint that's sitting within arm's reach and paint some. So I may do a video about that another time, but for today, just this. And a piece of scratch paper to put underneath so that when I'm smearing glue, it's not going to get all over my work surface. Okay, now that's everything. Now you can stop the video, go get your supplies, and then come on back, and we'll get started. Okay, so to do this, it's going to take a fair bit of glue. The back cover always takes way more glue than the front. May as well start here and get a feel for that. And then when you get to the front, ease back. And I do the outsides before I do the insides. There's probably people who like to do it in the other order for some reason, but this is how I do it, so that's what I'm going to teach you. Anything I'm doing is just simply how I do it. If you have a way that you prefer, if you have products you prefer, if something I do is just cringy to you, then just do your thing. But if you've never done it, or if you're not sure your way is the best, try mine just to see. I like to take other people's classes, and early on when I was in my 30s and still thought I knew everything, I would be like, well, okay, but do you mind if I do my own thing? And teachers were always nice, and they're like, no, you're an artist, you can do whatever you want. But two things in that scenario. Number one, when a teacher is teaching a class to a whole group of people, while yes, they want you to express your own creativity, at the same time, if you're doing something different and it doesn't work and you have to interrupt the flow of teaching that teacher's technique, if you have to interrupt their flow, it's a little hard on them. And so, sometimes I'll have a class where I don't care. We are doing such wildly different projects. Each personal project is so different. It's like you do whatever you want, and I've got time scheduled in for that. But interrupting a teacher's flow is kind of not cool for everyone else in the class as well as for the teacher. So something to think about. The other thing is that just because you've been taught one way or figured out one way doesn't mean it's the only way to do a thing. And even if you try the teacher's way of doing it and you don't love it, think of class as just a time to experiment. You don't have to make the most amazing piece of art ever. It's not a competition. Yours doesn't have to be better than everyone else's in class. It doesn't have to be something to go in a gallery. So enjoy the process of learning from the teacher and from the other people in the class, and leave the doing it your way for another time. Just a suggestion. My thoughts on the topic. Okay. I know that's a perforated edge. Doesn't much matter. Okay, I'm going to want to leave myself an even amount, top and bottom. You saw I really, really glued that up. Lots of glue. I want it to stay wet because I don't want to get air bubbles. I want an even amount of overhang, top and bottom. I am not worried about trimming off the excess out on the side. And I'm going to press from the center out to the edge, and from the center out to the edge. Best chance of not getting glue bubbles. This is where a broken credit card does not work very well. So I'm going to do this. And this is where, if you have a roller, you may want to bring in the roller, but this will do just fine. And this is why I was saying you don't need to go out and buy any fancy tools. Dig around in your wallet for that store card that you don't use. You just got it because it was an extra 10% off of your whole purchase that day. And it's like, well, why not? So, and then we're going to flip it over. And here with other kinds of bookbinding, you might do something different. For this, and this is where you may want the ruler. You can eyeball this, but it's easier with a ruler. I'm going to lay that ruler right on top of that and draw a line. And my line is just inside that. And that will keep me from ending up with paper that overhangs too much to the outside. And then I'll just do, yep. Yep. I'm leaving just a little of extra paper. Gives me an option to get it glued in. This is where working with cardstock is not great, because you can end up with these corners. It's a little bit harder to cover. Sorry, my brain went somewhere else. One other thing you might want: a skewer, a bone folder, even the back end of a thinner paintbrush. Do we have one here? There's one that's got kind of a thinner back end, because you may want to do this just to score your fold, and that one's not ideal. Oh, and we got some glue squished out. The other thing you can do is you can run a ballpoint pen down it. You're not going to see that side. It just gives it a bit of a score. It makes it fold easier. One of these days I'll actually get my act together so that my materials list is all done in advance. Today it was all I could do just to get a video recorded. I had promised myself for the last 2 weeks that I was recording on Sunday. Last week, stuff that had to happen, had to happen. I had a project for a client that was on a deadline. It was party decor kind of stuff, and couldn't be late, so I had to work Sunday morning. So, didn't record. This morning, was going to be here bright and early to record, but then I realized that I juiced a bunch of blackberries the other day to make seedless blackberry jam, and they were still sitting in the fridge, and I wasn't going to have another chance this week, and I'll be darned if I'm going to let 10 cups of blackberry pulp go to waste. So, getting a late start on it today. And, well, I would really like to share what I know in lots of fun and fabulous YouTube videos, and do it really well, like as well as some of the very best YouTubers out there. I'm going to settle for now for getting videos done. And hopefully you'll enjoy them and watch them, and they'll be useful. That's the hope. Okay, and this has a little perforated thing here. I'm going to go ahead and fold that and pull it off. Now, at this point, you can trim this piece of paper back to here. I like to leave it long on the chance that I decide, which I probably won't today because I've planned this out, but on the chance I decide I don't want to use this piece of scrapbook paper, but I happen to have a magazine page or a calendar page that isn't wide enough to cover everything, having this extra paper there is helpful. So I leave it on. You don't have to. Next thing is getting these in and glued. You can do in either order. You can do this first or this first. I haven't noticed it making any difference. I slightly prefer the finish of having this underneath, so I'm going to glue it down first. Get my gluey paper back in here. That has some glue seepage there that I don't want to get back on the outside. It's a good idea to have a few sheets of scrap paper so you can leave one laying aside to dry while using another. And when you're working with tacky glue or any other glue, but tacky glue takes a while to get down to the tip, and I did just have to shake it, but I didn't have to shake it too much. I find it's best, cap it, leave it on its side, or better yet, leave it in a jar or whatever. I use little canning jars. They seem to be a good height for that. There's my glue spreader there. So I've got lots of glue on there. I'm getting it all the way out to the edges. I'm also getting it all the way in against here. All the way off of the edge. And I'm seeing some dry spots. So I'm going to do a little second glob. It's kind of hard to decide sometimes how much is too much glue. You don't want your paper soggy, but at the same time you don't want air bubbles. And air bubbles happen when there's not enough glue to make that connection. And I live in a very dry climate, so pretty much it just sucks the air out, or sucks the moisture out instantly. Okay, so I've folded it over, and I'm getting it pushed back against the edge first, and then pushing it out. Fewest possible air bubbles, tightest possible connection to that edge. Okay, and here I'm doing the side. And this is where I've left a little bit of extra on the corner, and it'll hopefully help to make that really cover well. I think it's just going to do it. I'm kind of using my thumbnail to just soften the paper up a little bit so it'll mold around that corner, and I'll give it a little extra hit of glue. And hopefully the paper will just form around there, and then the glue will saturate the fibers enough to harden it up. Now, if this wasn't going to be covered up, you'd want to be being extra careful about not having so much glue that it's going to seep out. And then again, I'm kind of pushing up at the edge, and because this is a thicker scrapbook paper, it's got a little bit of a mind of its own. It's trying to spring back to its original shape. So take a moment to get that pressed in. Let me get that corner pressed in. That's got pretty good coverage. Using thinner papers, you would leave more and you bring it in and cover that corner first. And you can do it with these thicker papers. It's just not something I do on these particular journals. But if that's a thing you've been taught or that you've used before and you like that, certainly by all means, you can cover your corners a bit better than I do. I don't mind when they get a little bit worn, and honestly, I don't have too much trouble with them getting all that worn, even though I haul my sketchbooks around, or journals, sketchbook journals. Okay, pressed in. Okay, and then I am just going to keep it simple and use this inside. And the easiest way to measure what I want is to put it underneath. I'll pull this out of here so I don't get glue on things I don't want glue on. Put it over there. Ooh, slurp of tea. Tea time. Oh, yeah. There's a reason I'm a member of the Absent-Minded Tea Drinkers Association. I am fully qualified. I can leave that sitting around forever. Okay, so matching it up there. Matching it up there. All right. Easiest way to do this is pencil, but being careful that my pencil does not mark on this, because that will make me a little bit annoyed. And I'll put marks there, although I think I'm going to cut it in shorter so that some of this shows to the inside. And this is where I could perfectly well use a pair of scissors, but I've got this, and I know I want to cut just a little bit inside that line. But, that's going to be tricky because I've left that edge on. This particular paper pad comes with a solid edge in there, which is nice. I think they've done it so that, you know, you don't ruin your edge if you're somebody who's using that full sheet of paper, so that you don't get stuck with that little perforated edge. You don't want it. And do I throw these away? No, I stick them up here in a special spot in my stacky bins. Actually, it's not a stacking bin, but it's the same kind of thing. It's an old metal one. Stick up there, because I use those for other things. Okay, so there's that. Can I see where my marks were for out here? No, because I cut one of them off. That's all right. And I think rather than being all perfect, how far back? That's as far back as it is. I'm going to go ahead and give it a torn edge. Here. I'm being careful not to pull too far back. I know I've got that. But see, here is where having that overlapping paper gives you some options. So that makes me happy. I am going to take a moment with an ink pad and blending tool. And yes, my blending tool is a piece of cork with, I forgot how dark that brown is. I didn't want that dark. Let's try a different one. In fact, I might want green. Anyway, my blending tool is a champagne cork with a furniture foot pad thingy stuck to it, and I don't count on the adhesive that comes on the furniture pads to do the trick. I'm going to dab off some of the ink off of this. Off camera, am I dabbing this on my jeans? Yeah. Do I now have black circly polka dots on my jeans? Yes, but they're paint jeans. It's fine. I was cleaning stamps on them earlier. I actually kind of like the idea of maybe some of this green. I have to remember not to jab in so much though. Oh yeah, I like that. Okay, so I'm going to tear a little of this off. Get some of that extra dark off of there that I didn't want. And I do also have a lighter brown here that's more browny, but everything else mixed in, not sure. Yeah, okay. And I think I won't bother to do the top and bottom edge, just the torn edge. That makes me happy. A little more green here where that was. A little more brown. Okay, I like that. Make sure I put the right lids and the right colors. Okay, so same glue spreading bit. Is my paper dry enough? Yeah. Okay. Did I cap my glue? No. Have I got a big glue booger there? Yes. Probably would have been fine, but wipe it off just so I'm not having to pick it out of things later. So while I was getting ready, I was noticing, because I did not do this first thing in the morning, I was noticing my fingernails are not looking spectacular for filming video. And I could probably just not say a word and probably nobody would ever notice. But if you notice that my fingernails are grungy, it doesn't mean I don't clean my fingernails. It doesn't mean I don't care and don't know that you're supposed to make your fingernails look all nice before you do how-to videos. But I'm an artist. I very carefully this morning, because I knew that the other day when I juiced those blackberries, they stained my hands and I had gray fingers for a couple of days. So I knew I didn't want to get blackberry stains. So I wore gloves this morning, kitchen gloves, which drive me nuts, but okay, I didn't want to get gray fingers. But then I came to the studio and realized I needed to do a couple other things before I filmed this video. And those other things involved ink and paint. And I can only scrub my fingernails so many times in a day before they start getting raw and hurting. So my nails are just what they are. They're artist fingers. There's never anything terribly gross under them, at least not on camera. I do use my hands, but I clean them. But if they're not perfect and it bugs you, I'm sorry. Okay, did I go over the top? Nope. Great. And that is why you cut it just a little bit smaller, so you have a little wiggle room, because I gave myself a little more space on the bottom thinking I had more of a cut than I did, but it's still not overlapping the top edge. And so that makes me happy. Grab my not particularly useful store card. Okay, now at some point in the future, I may find a picture that I like and put it in here, and this will just be background, or it'll just be the back of the book, and it's fine. So I'm going to come up here to the front. I'm going to do essentially the same thing. So if you don't want to watch that whole process again, just go ahead. You can scroll that little bar across on the bottom of the video, and when I pull out the fabric and do this, then you'll know it's time to click back on, and I'll be starting on the binding. And in fact, I'm going to attempt to be quiet so that I can just fast forward through if I do decide to edit. But I probably won't edit. Okay, I probably won't be quiet, but I won't say anything important. How about that? Might work. We'll see. I could live there. Maybe. It's probably cold. It probably doesn't have great heat. I'd probably hate it. Yeah, this is how I make myself feel better. These are the kinds of things I talk about in case I want to edit it out later. Maybe I'll just zip fast. And I won't feel like I have to edit out if I can get it in 5 minutes. Did I do this on top of paper? No, I did not. Hopefully in the next few weeks I'm going to reupholster this chair so you won't hear my jeans squeaking against the vinyl upholstery. And I'll tighten up all the screws so that the chair itself will not squeak every time I move. And we may get a taste of why I like to film early on Sunday morning rather than later in the day. Because got people going by on the sidewalk. And that can sometimes get quite noisy. I have old windows. They don't hear me. When they're standing out there, they don't hear me because all the traffic noise and stuff outside. But because I'm in here and all quiet, I hear them. Usually it's all good. Once in a while it's weird. That's all right, getting it really well covered. Especially on my front cover, I do not want air bubbles. Flop that out so that I'm not worried about this touching anything at all. And making sure I'm right side up since it matters on this image. And then that's long enough to wrap. If my image was not long enough to wrap all the way around, oh, is that straight? Ish. Yeah. Do that quickly if you have to do it. Come on, you. If my image was not long enough to wrap over the edge, I could start it out here and cover the edge with the trims later. I probably just guaranteed that there's no way that I will edit video and make that go faster, because I just said something sort of important. Okay, here, this paper's going to want to wrinkle. I'm going to try to work those wrinkles out as I go. My fingers in my water cup. Do have to kind of make sure that what I'm dipping in is my water and not my tea sometimes. I want to get it pressed out with my fingers first. Or just gentler on the paper. Now, should I have put something down on the table to keep these edges from gluing to that? Yeah, but it'll probably pick up nicer off of my cutting mat than it would off of a piece of parchment paper anyway. Got one little air bubble there. Come on, air bubble. And I'm trying to be really careful not to rip my paper. If I do, there's a few things that can be done about it. You can glue a little bit of something else over. You can add a little clear gesso later. Okay, I'm just going to do a quick glue removal. Alrighty, good enough. There's one little tiny air bubble, but I'm satisfied. And this, I don't have that much wrapping around. I am going to just kind of cut like that. I know I'm going to completely cover this inside with that other piece of paper. And I've left just a little extra to come over the corners. Again, you could, and this is a thin enough paper, I could have done it. You can fold in your corner first rather than cutting it off. Oh, let's get on camera. You can fold in, rather than cutting this off, I could have folded this one in and then fold down and fold in. So if you're using a thin enough paper, you can do that. The scrapbook paper, regular scrapbook paper would be fine, but everything I have is at least a light cardstock weight. And in this case, yeah, I'm putting the glue on all of them at once. I know that I'm going to get them folded in quick enough. I'm fine with that. If you're not sure how speedy you are, just put the glue on one piece at a time. You can always add more, but it does kind of build up. And I want to have enough that it gets all the way out to the edge. And again, I should probably have paper underneath. The biggest time I find the paper underneath is important, though, is when I'm really spreading it over a whole piece of paper and I need to just move the glue and not worry about being fussy at the edges when I really need it to go over the edges. Just gonna press in that corner just a little bit. It is just slightly wrinkling the paper when I do that. I'm just going to burnish it down. And if you don't want to use the back of your fingernail, bone folder, just kind of burnishing that down. And that gives you a good protected corner. Okay. Inside. Okay, so yeah, I got a glue bubble right there, air bubble right there. You can sometimes poke a pin in. It's not truly dry, and that air bubble is just moving around. Sometimes you can work it out. Sometimes you can poke a pin in. Get it? That one worked out just by massaging it because there was enough glue. It just didn't get pressed out smoothly. Okay. And there's a little bit. Did I just spit on my thumb and do that? I did. I was getting a little bit of a glue streak off. Okay. Inside, upright. Oh, I think that's pretty. Let's see. What does it say? Every great dream begins with a dreamer. Always remember you have within you the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars to change the world. And that's a little twee, but I'll go with it. So I'm going to want this to cover pretty closely. What's going on? Going to cut off a little bit of the word world, but I will never be reading it anyway, probably, so won't much matter. Okay, there's that. And giving myself a little bit of wiggle room. There's that. Okay, paper cutter. Aside. I think I'm done with that for today. That's going to get glued in right there. Yeah, those do kind of bug me. I know what I'm going to do. I am going to, I did this the other day on something else, that's why I know it makes me happy. I'm going to go ahead and just knock out some of the whiteness there. And I'm actually using my finger as well as this. It's slick paper, so that's why I knew it would behave like this. It's just kind of bugging me. It's too white. And I'm going to go a little bit on the inside too. Do you have to do this? No. Do you want to do this? Maybe. Test it on a snippet of the paper that you cut off first, possibly. I knew this would work the way I wanted it to on slick paper because I literally, less than 24 hours ago, greened up something else using the same ink and the same technique. So I knew it would rub in and just be kind of random. There's probably lots of other things I could use. The nice thing about the ink is that unlike latex paint or acrylic paint, it won't have any stickiness. Sometimes acrylic paint, if you put a journal on a shelf and it's got acrylic paint on the cover or even inside in the pages, and they get pressed together, it can, just kind of blending that in, it can stick to other things. It has a habit of never quite completely drying. Okay, there, knocked that down. That makes me happier. And now, yeah, if my messy fingers bother you, okay. Did I just wipe that off on my jeans again? I did. Do I wear these jeans in public? I do. Speaking of things I do in public, I am turning into my mother, except maybe weirder in some ways. I stopped at the local Maxi Mart type store. Wait a minute, right side up. May as well put the words in right side up. To get some shelf brackets this morning. And as with many places, staffing is a bit skimpy these days. And there was one older, I'd say at least in her 60s and probably a bit older than that, woman checking, which is never a surprise when staffing is short. It's almost always that good old dependable generation, unlike me and those younger who might call in, well. Yeah, she was there. She was doing her best. She was being efficient, but the line was getting longer and longer. And, you know, we're in the polite part of the world where we let people go ahead of us in line and we give people the benefit of the doubt for the most part. So nobody was grumbling out loud, but nobody was saying anything. Everybody was just silent. And I was finally up to the checkout counter, and everybody's just being silently polite, but it was to the point where it was feeling a little heavy. And the music was kind of snappy, and whatever song was on ended. And the next song that came up was Barbara Ann, Beach Boys. And everybody in line behind me, well, maybe one gal wasn't in her 50s, but pretty much everyone was my generation or older. So, you know, there's no doubt we all know the song. And I started to say something, and then I started to chicken out, and then I thought, oh, what the hell, lighten things up a little bit. And so I just blurted out really loudly. And then everyone spontaneously burst into dance. It lightened it up instantly. Do not be afraid to say the dorky thing. It was totally dorky. And, you know, I didn't like all out dance, but I busted a few moves. People started laughing. They started chattering about, oh, we all know the song. Of course we want to dance. And, people wiggled a little bit more. But it broke the ice. And then the people who were left in line started actually just visiting with each other instead of standing there tense and patient. It was definitely worth doing. And I'm so glad that I talked myself out of staying quiet. Because I really did almost just not say anything. It's like, no, don't be a dork. No, be a dork. The world needs dorks. All right. And there we go. Usually I would get that lined right up to the edge of those. I didn't. It's okay. It's not something that I can mind much. And the scrapbook paper tends to, this anyway, where it's cardstock, it tends to go down pretty flat and even. Don't worry quite so much about air bubbles. Okay. And yes, I left the lid off, mostly because I lost, there it is, track of the lid. I do try to put things down in the same place. Okay. Left the lid off. That's what happens. It's okay. Dries, it wipes up. Thing will dry up. Not a big deal. Okay, so I will rinse my fingers a little. I just stuck them in my teacup. Do I care? Nah, I'll drink the tea anyway. No noticeable glue. The Earl can take it. Okay, so we're up to that point. Back's looking good, front's looking good, inside. On. Okay, so I will wave the fabric around momentarily so that those who are fast forwarding through my chatter. If you did fast forward through my chatter, I might have said something kind of important, but not very. So, and if I could remember what it was, I'd tell you so you could decide whether or not to go back and look at it. Okay. I think, yeah, I like that little frayed edge. I'm going to bring it out. I kind of hate to lose a little bit of the graphic, but this always happens. Something I could have warned you about and didn't. And this wants to make a wavy edge. I'm just going to have to bite the bullet, cope with it. Okay. So I want 4 inches and maybe just a hair more. 3, 4. I think I'll cut it at 4.5. Paper scissors are going to do real well on that. Let's see. Let me cut height first. I am not going to glue hem, so I'm going to cut this the height of the book. My junky fabric scissors that only cut on the back edge. Could I have gotten out my good ones? I could, and I will, because a straighter cut would have been nice. Yes, there are good fabric scissors and not so good fabric scissors around here. Pull a few threads just to get that evened up. Okay. Okay. And then leaves just about exactly enough to do another book sometime. It's one of the things I miss about living near Minneapolis was living near S.R. Harris. If you're ever in the Minneapolis area, S.R. Harris is fabric heaven. Unless you're having a day where chaos stresses you out, in which case it can be fabric hell. So, glorious fabrics for really cheap. But if you want them all and you're on a budget, sometimes you just buy little snippets of things. So I'm down to the end of some of my favorites. Let me see, over an hour. This is going to be typical for my videos. Try to do this quickly. All right, I'm going to glue it to the front first and the back second. Now do think about this. You may have a situation where you want some of your trims to be underneath this layer, so take a moment. You've got your fabric laid on there. Give it some thought about what you might want to use for trims. I have these painted laces. That's probably too much of a match, at least to put out there. A lot of times I like to use GIMP. Sometimes it seems like it's too bulky, and in this case, I don't think that's what I'm going to want. Well, I could completely cover. Oh, I kind of like the way the GIMP gets that book page color picked up, and then I'm actually covering up my frayed edge. But I sort of like that finish. Somehow I like the way that looks with that. I had also thought about using an unexpected contrast, because this, while it has nothing to do with this, that's the color in the shadow on the top of all those books in that photo. I kind of like that. I really just like that for some reason. That is really making me happy. I did grab some black velvet. That's kind of nice too. Oh, that's got a handy piece of tape, and I don't know that I want to undo that. Okay, could do something like this. I think part of the reason I'm not liking the fringe on this is that because the way this stripe is woven, it pulls it into a wobbly edge, and I think with the graphic of the book, you know, the books, I don't love the wobbly edge, because even when I just put the black velvet on there, which isn't, I don't love the look as much, but I like that really crisp edge. So I think I'm going to surprise myself here. I don't think I'm going to end up using any of the painted lace. I thought I would, but nope. And another random color that I knew would pick up in here. Nope. Okay. Could I have made all these decisions before? Kind of. Like, this isn't a bad second choice. It covers that edge. It gives some, gives a little bit less of a crisp edge, which is kind of nice. And it does what this did in that it picks up this top bit. Now I could use that in combination with this. Do two things and then this. But there's something about the crisp simplicity of that with what this graphic is. Normally I'm like, throw on the trims, but I like this. This is what I'm going with. I might do something different on the back, but this is what I'm doing on the front. And the GIMP I do like to wrap around because it likes to come unraveled, so I'm going to leave myself a generous, don't cut it too short, you can cut it short later. I'm going to leave a generous one. Would I want it to come all the way? I don't want it to come all the way in. It can be annoying if you have a lot of this here and you flip a page and you're trying to write and you've got this lump. So keep in mind that little bit. But at first I'm going to leave myself a generous amount and I can trim it a little bit shorter. What always makes me sad is when I don't leave a generous amount and then I can't trim it And I can barely get it wrapped around. And it's annoying. Speaking of annoying, I've got a cap that's glued on. Come off. And again, this may be, see, this is Fabri-Tac makes excellent glue boogers. And the part that's at the end may be just about as dry as that. Anything coming out? No. If I pull the cap off here, is anything coming out? Yeah. The next thing Fabri-Tac does is make volcanoes. Makes lovely volcanoes. Oh, and that's really, really thick on the end. There was no way that was going to come through. Let's get that out of the way. Did I have this here especially for this? No, but here it is. Let's see if I can make use of any of that. Nope, it's really rubbery. The next bit out? Maybe? I hate to waste the stuff, so I'm going to give it a try. Do not do this at home. Just use the fresh bottle. Do not do this on video. Just use the fresh bottle. Okay, let's see if my Fabri-Tac Mini, which also has been opened, let's see if this is in better shape. Oh yeah, that's going to squeeze out the way it should. It's still very thick. It's still very hard to squeeze. But that is kind of what makes Fabri-Tac nice. It doesn't soak through most fabrics. If you have a really thin fabric, go light. The other thing you can do is you can draw a line here and you can put your fabric glue on here if you know where you're going. But you do want your glue right at the edge. And in this case, I left those fibers on thinking I was going to want them, and I should have just trimmed them off just now before I did that. Did I? No. And now I'm thinking, you know what? Because I want the GIMP to glue down well and hide that edge. I don't want those fibers on there. And I will probably have to clean off my good sewing scissors later because they're going to get some of this glue on them. All right, kids. This is a do as I say, not as I do thing. Sorry. How not to make a covered journal. But that also just goes to show you can recover from any perceived oops or boo-boo. And once you lay that down, then because I've got this edge that wants to pull into a wave, I can put a ruler on there, straighten it out some. Get it to lay straight. I did end up with a little bit more on there than I want. If your fabric is like it's barely holding on there, just give it a minute. You can put sometimes different trims, different fabrics. You can put a ruler down on there and just hold down for a moment. This one is holding down just fine. It isn't always the case. The other thing, here's another, do as I say, not as I do. Typically, I just leave that alone. But I do want to flip this over because I want to check. I'm wanting to see where this is lining up here. Okay. Another effect of the slightly wavy edge, weaving the way that it's woven, whatever it is I'm trying to say. Okay. I'm just going to dust those off on the floor and deal with them later. Okay. Wipe off that bubble, which will already be partially dry. Fabri-Tac dries super fast. I'm going to do, this is what I was saying earlier, I am not putting a glue hem. If I was doing a glue hem, I'd have left it long. I'd have done the same thing with the glue and then folded it over. In this case, I'm just using it very much like if you're familiar with sewing, you might be familiar with fray check. This is probably the same thing, except fray check is much thinner and can soak through your fabric to the front. If you have it though and you like it, use it by all means. I'm gonna get a little on here without gluing pages. Okay. All right, let that dry for a moment because I don't want that to stick to anything. I just want it, that's just gonna bond the fibers of that fabric so that it won't go anywhere. Could I have done that before I stuck it on here? Yeah. Again, this is just, you know, how I do it. I know lots of things about doing things the right way, but sometimes I just want to go with the flow of the make. Will this mark? I think it will mark well enough to see to trim it. Okay. Trying to be careful not to stick those fresh edges into anything. I may as well get this trimmed off while I'm puttering about. Now, did I need quite that much overhang back here? No. But I don't mind it, so I'm just going to go with it. When you're wrapping this part, don't pull it super tight so that you see all the spirals. It's going to make it hard, especially if you end up gluing a lot of things into your journal. You're not going to want it that tight. It'll look better, it'll move better if you let it relax. You know, pull it up too and back it off a bit. And I'm just going to go ahead. And usually I will completely do the front and then flip it over and do the back. Again, if my fabric was having any difficulty sticking on the front, I would have not started on the back. I would have just waited a few minutes. Okay, now I want that there. And I just left my ruler there. Yeah, I think I'll draw a line and get my ruler out of the way so I don't end up having to deal with glue on the ruler. How's that for being responsible? And I'm going to go ahead, in this case, because it's just easier, I'm going to get my fabric glue on here. The reason it's easier is because I'm not fighting the fibers, I'm trying to work the glue in, and I can see that I'm right on the edge of where I want it. And I'll come back quite a ways, but I'm not going to worry about going all the way back over in this area. This is fine. It's more important to have it out here at the edge. And then in case that's the last Fabri-Tac mini in the world, I won't have used any unnecessary amount of it. Or the last one in my studio, and I may want it in a minute when I'm sticking on the trims. All right, that's on. It's not too tight, it's soft, it moves. And because it's not having any problem sticking, and I am pushing that down really well, just because I want to be sure that glue gets into the fibers of the fabric. Doesn't do you much good if it all just sits on the surface. You want it to soak in a bit so you get a better bond. Okay. And then, yeah, I've tried all of the other things, and I know that I really just like that crisp, clean look there. Whew, this is going to make me happy. As you saw, I did already start writing in this journal. It's mid-October, and I started writing in it the first of the month. But I didn't do the cover because I knew I wanted to video it. Okay, and then I'm going to do my trim. And I'm doing a line down the middle. Oh, please, Fabri-Tac, don't run out. I think it won't worry over much about getting all the way to the end up there. And Then, depending on how much travel your book is going to do, I like to get the glue all the way over to the edges of my trim. And you need to do this fairly quickly. And that may be a problem because I think I'm going to run out of Fabri-Tac in this one, and I'm not positive I have any more of these minis here. But there's a good bit down the middle. I can get it spread over to the edge too. Squeezing every last drop like the toothpaste tube. Okay, get my fingers in there. Try not to get too much on my fingers. Okay, and I know I only want a little bit to wrap around the bottom. I don't want to cover any more of the edge than I really need to. People outside looking at my window, actually reading the signage. That always makes me happy, instead of standing there and being really confused about what we do here. Okay, and then on the inside, because it's GIMP, I'm going to have to do a little extra glue to get all of the bits glued down. Now, I may come in later and put a sticker or an applique or some small thing over this. Again, I don't want it to get too bulky, but that's one way to deal with those edges. A lot of times people just end the trim. When I do this in classes, in person, people just end the trim right at the top edge. And depending on your trim, that can be just fine. This GIMP, I know, has a tendency to shred a bit. Okay, can I get one more little bit? And there we go. And then I'm going to do basically the same technique on the back. So if you've had all you can stand, wander off. Turn off the video, finish your own project. I hope that you made along, because boy, if you watch this whole video for this long and you didn't make along, well, maybe I kept you company while you worked on something else. I know my friend Kit watches my videos sometimes, and I think she does her bookkeeping while watching them. But then, you know, she's my friend and she loves me. You could be my friend too. You're welcome to love me if you want. I'm pretty lovable. Let's see. Where did I put? I've reorganized the studio. That is not any longer directly behind me, but it's not too far out of the way. Fabri-Tac minis. Yay! There are a few. Hopefully I can find more of those online. Okay, because they're actually easier to manage than the big bottles, and I will do a little, you know, see if I can get every last drop out of here. Okay. And so there's the front. And just making sure where, once this has cured, the Fabri-Tac won't do that, but that's where I did that reinforcement on the edge, so I'll just need to keep an eye on that so I don't smoosh it together, because once it cures it would be harder to pull apart. And then on the back I may want to do something different. I may want to use the lace trim, even one of the colored ones. Let's see. This was my first thought when I did it, was that I was going to want like a purple edge. Did I paint it solid purple? No. But I kind of like this brown. How do I feel about teal back here? No. It's not bad because there is some green mixed in there, but sometimes I like to completely contrast. Like I do that and this orange. Like it's totally different, but there's usually some interesting bit of art that it plays off of. Even if it doesn't match the art, it plays off of it. And I haven't decided about putting anything on the back cover. I usually don't, but I do kind of like that. And I don't know if I care about matching the front. Nah, doesn't knock my socks off back here. Did on the front. My socks are long gone. And while I do like a little bit of black on everything, well, maybe if I put this in, would I want the black there in between? I have a feeling no, but we'll look at it. It's kind of pretty, but it's not exciting. I'll save the black ribbon for some other thing. I'm just going to go with this. So for this one, because this is lace, I'm going to lay this on here. Because there's bound to be. And I could just do the edge here. That would get that covered. But again, if you don't glue down the outside edge, it's going to come up. Now the other thing, I am using Fabri-Tac on this because I'm gluing to this fabric. This outside edge, if I didn't have any more Fabri-Tac, I'd use this on the inside edge, and because this is painted and that's paper, I would grab my tacky glue to go along this side if I didn't have another tube of Fabri-Tac sitting there in the wings. But feeling all flush with materials. I'm supposed to poke something here. Yeah. Oh, a fresh tube. Should have started with this so you didn't have the pain of watching me struggle. Yeah, even fresh tube, it's very thick. It doesn't squeeze out that fast. Kind of getting anxious because this top end has been sitting there drying, and it does dry quick. You can do half and fold it back and do the other half if trying to get things done before they go off stresses you out. And I'm going to do it just there and pull it down just a bit. Yeah. Get my ruler, and I'm very roughly squaring it up by matching this against the bottom edge. Doesn't matter over much, but sometimes I look later, and once I've seen it, I can't unsee it if things are really crooked. So while I'm thinking about it, square it up. And again, I'm just going to fold in a little bit. This one is thinner, and it wouldn't cause too much drama if I let it go long. I've been known to, if the trim's coming in really close, I've been known to run it right up the seam, but I sometimes regret that. And then this top, I didn't put any on. I think that's going to be about enough. Whew. I'm about done, which is good because I'm getting hungry. Dad made waffles. We put fresh blackberry jam on them. I made regular blackberry jam the other day, and this morning I made some for Dad that had whiskey and vanilla, because he enjoys whiskey, but he's not drinking currently because he's up with Mom in the night, and he said even one drink relaxes him so much he doesn't always hear her wake up. Mama has Alzheimer's and she needs a little help toing and froing in the night, getting back and forth to the bedroom if she gets up to use the bathroom. So anyway, so he's not drinking, but he was feeling sad about his whiskey, so I threw some in some jam. He enjoyed his waffles very much, and I enjoyed his waffles. I made a second batch that had rosemary and rose hips. So I call it Rosy Blackberry. And the rose hips were just because I knew I was about a half a cup short of the full 5 cups of fruit that I needed for the jam recipe. And I knew if I tossed some rose hips in some warm water for a moment, they'd plump up and they could substitute in. I don't think they changed the flavor in the least. They're related to blackberries. But they worked as a filler, and it was really yummy. I'm super fond of rosemary, and in fact we'll drink rosemary tea, and I'll make rosemary simple syrup and mix it with tonic water, and that's my idea of a cocktail. So may have to make some for Dad, since he's been drinking my no alcohol beer. So I'm gonna have to make him some cocktail stuff so I have something left. All right, so there we go. It's a covered journal. One of these days soon, hopefully, I will pop back on and show you how to do some different things. One of the first things I like to stick in any of my journals is a pocket towards the front, and then oftentimes I'll make pockets for things. In this case, this was notes for decorations for a ball. I think for my gown also, or everything for that ball was in there. And that way I can pull those notes out and wander around with them. I can pull things off my clipboard and stick in there, because not everything gets written in the journal. So hopefully I'll come back and show you that, and then we can tuck in to those pockets things like these fabulous potion bottles. I think I'll have to make a pocket for this, or I might just, it's a little tall for just gluing on. Might be a little taller than I want in here. I may find a different one of these, but anyway, do something with my potion bottles and whatever else. That's it. I'll stop talking. Go, finish your journals. I hope you enjoyed this. It's really basic. You might already know how to do all of that stuff, but it's a sweet way to get a large, good-looking, inexpensive cover journal. And I have now about 14 of them, because I've been doing it for about the last 8 or 9 years, and I do these days 2 a year. So I'm going to click off of here. End of video. See you next time. Well, we won't actually see each other, but you know.